My name is Miriam McConnon. I'm a visual artist. I was born in Dublin in Ireland. I studied fine art painting at the National College of Art in Ireland, and following that I completed a postgraduate at the Cyprus College of Art. I emigrated to Cyprus in 2003. I still currently live in Cyprus but exhibit in both Ireland and Cyprus, and my work is very much part of both art worlds. I think being an immigrant in a new country and having learned to live through another language, in this case the Greek language, gave me a humility and an ability to observe life from the outside a bit, which has allowed me to be more observant as an artist, to notice the small, often kind of hidden details in people's lives. Emigrating also gave me the ability to observe my own upbringing and Irish culture from a distance, a society that has become much more open and a culture that is evolving. Art has played an influential role in not only mirroring social and historical changes in Ireland, but at times leading this change. Both countries, Cyprus and Ireland, share colonial history and are on the final frontiers of the EU. This is an important detail in my art practice as I present people's stories in the social, political context of each nation. Growing up in Ireland with stories from my grandparents and parents of the country's struggle for independence and also their everyday domestic struggles to rear children in times of extreme poverty definitely paved the way for me to have a wider view of the world and to realise that hardship and war is nomadic. The news was always on in our home when I was a child, and as a family we discussed politics openly and also religion, even though it was still a taboo subject in the 1980s and 90s in Ireland. Also in the background of my childhood there was the violence of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and then in the 1990s the exposure of the extensive abuse within the Catholic Church. The questioning of the normalisation of violence and of the power of the church over state came into question on a national level and also on a personal level for me. This questioning of religious belief paved the way for my first solo exhibition in 2008, which was called Silent Innocence. I have continued to have an interest in objects of religious worship and how religion is tied to ethnicity and gender imbalance, and also the normalisation of violence in Christian religious teachings and in its imagery. So some big influences from the art world and my work would be artists like Brian Maguire, Doris Salcedo, Rachel Whiteread, Chihiro Shiota, Cornelia Parker, Frank Garbach, Louise Bourgeois, William Turner are amongst many who have influenced my work. In my most recent work, which is called Hunting the Wounded, I present objects which are from archaeological findings from both Ireland and Cyprus. These objects were chosen based on the far-right anthem in both countries, which is nation, family and religion. These objects are inlaid with a pattern that is taken from the objects that hold personal stories of those who have been displaced through war and conflict around the world, the vulnerable in our society. And the specific patterns on the objects are testimonies to their narrative and their journey. The work questions this kind of demonization of the vulnerable in society by the far-right groups and questions who and what are these fascist groups really scared of? Who is their enemy? And the patterns on the objects are also quite cryptic, although they're personal, so it gives an anonymity to the people who gave me permission to use their objects in my work. And often history does record only fragments of people's narratives. It always is quite interesting how history is often told in a series of battles, conquering nations and invasions. This recent work really is concerned with the stories of settlers, the land, migration, war, fear, genocide, worship, oppression, gender discrimination, gender profiling, misogyny, and the glorification of battle. It also examines the idea of heritage and the protection of heritage, or indeed the restriction of the evolution of it. It looks at nationalism in a multinational world. Another piece that I'm working on, which will be presented in October 2026, is an outdoor installation called the Holy Trinity. It will present 3 sets of large rosary beads, which will hang in a cave in a historical site in Paphos in Cyprus, where I live. The 3 rosary beads will represent 3 female figures of worship, Aphrodite and Demetra being from pre-Christian times, and then the image of Holy Mary also from Christian times. The piece will take inspiration from the archaeological findings at the particular site, which is called Fabrica Hill, where they found a small beaded bracelet in the tomb of a child. I've constructed the 3 sets of rosary beads from wire and white soap. The 3 rosary beads are identical except for a small fragment of fabric which is inlaid into each bar of soap. These pieces of fabric associate each rosary bead with a particular female of worship. A cross will hang at the end of each of the rosary beads, one different in form from the other, which will reference the origin of the cross as a symbol of worship from pre-Christian times. The use of the soap in the installation hints at the ritual of purifying and cleansing the body of sin using water in pre-Christian and Christian rituals. The white soap also exposes this demand for absolute purity from the Christian figure of Holy Mary, in contrast to the more natural and human representation of both Aphrodite and Demetra in ancient worship. I think one of the biggest challenges of being an artist for me is time management. It's difficult to survive financially from the sales of your artwork, so as an artist, you have to work at many jobs in order to have an income. And then as life moves on, as an artist and a mother myself, allocating studio time for my work has always been the biggest challenge. I've learned to be very driven, to have self-discipline, motivation, and to continue to create work and proposals for my work, even though it would mean working evenings, bank holidays, and weekends. The advice that I would give to my younger self is to research more, I think, for work, to attend more openings of exhibitions, meet more artists, apply for more residencies, and pay more attention to the history of art also. I would also say to my former self, believe in your ability, be confident and aim high. My indoor and outdoor installation artworks are the pieces that I would often have used unconventional mediums. I often used objects like letters, mail, shirts, books, cups, bed sheets that I would collect from people around the world. A good example of these would be my installation, The House of Letters, which was in 2017, and my installation, Lost Lace, which was for the victims of COVID in 2022. I usually listen to music when I'm working. I have a very eclectic music repertoire, and I listen to the music on old CDs, a bit of an old school. I listen to the likes of Neil Young, Bob Dylan, Conor Oberst, who I adore and whose music I see really as poetry. Damien Rice, Josh Ritter, Ryan Sheridan, Oasis, Amy Mann, Mumford & Son, Fionn Regan, U2, The National, Paul Simon, and Florence and the Machine, among many others. The best reaction that someone has had to my artwork would be my outdoor installation, Lost Lace, which was in Merrion Square in Dublin, where families who had lost loved ones to COVID travelled to Dublin from around Ireland and Northern Ireland to see the installation. And they left photos of their family members who had died of COVID at the site of the installation. For me, this was such a generous and personal response to the work. I hope viewers of my artwork gain more empathy towards their fellow human beings by engaging with my work and the stories of the most vulnerable in our society. My upcoming projects will be an outdoor installation, the Holy Trinity, which will be in October of this year in Paphos in Cyprus. It's part of the Aqua Memoria project. Then I will have a retrospective of 10 years of my paintings and drawings at the Blue Iris Gallery in Paphos, also Cyprus. Next year in August 2026, I have a solo show at the Olivier Cornet Gallery in Dublin. And then I will have a solo show later on 2026 in Nicosia in Cyprus at the Diatabos Centre for Contemporary Art also. And you can view films and images and learn more about my work on my website at www.miriammcconnonart.com.